Hi grade 3, today we are talking about something new called motion and potential motion. You might remember the word motion from when we first talked about force and motion. So let's quickly review what motion is before we learn about our new topic today. We remember motion is when an object moves and changes position. I showed you the example of when I kicked the soccer ball, and the motion was when the soccer ball moved and went into the goal. Motion is just when something goes from still to moving, or from moving to still, when it changes whatever it's doing. Even though it looks like my block is just sliding with no help at all, there are actually two forces that are being used during this motion. One is friction. We talked about friction yesterday. Friction is that force that occurs between two objects that are touching, that keeps it from sliding and moving all over the place. So there's actually friction here. And there's another force that we talked about earlier called gravity. And gravity is what keeps objects from floating away. Okay? And it's what pulls things down to the earth. So in my example, there is friction, but the friction is not as strong as the force of gravity, and that's why my object is able to move down. But we see in my other example, we're learning about something called potential motion. And the word potential means it might happen in the future. So this potential motion means something could move, but it's not moving yet. It's not moving right now, but we see that it could move if we make a couple of changes. In my example, you see that the ramp is not as high. And so this is a potential motion because my block is not moving yet. It's staying still. And there are also the same two forces acting on that block that there were in my first example. We see that there is friction in this example. The friction though, however, in this example is stronger because those two objects, the ramp and the block, are being pushed against each other, and the surfaces are making it harder for the block to slide. That's because the friction is stronger than the gravity. There's also gravity in this example, but because the block isn't tilted down as much, it's just tilted a little bit, the gravity isn't as strong. So when you are figuring out which force is stronger, gravity or friction, it helps to look at if your object is moving at a slant or not. This one's moving at a very big slant. So the gravity is strong and the friction is not. This one is moving at a tiny, tiny slant, so the gravity is not as strong, but the friction is a lot stronger, making it not able to move yet. But what do you think I could do to change this potential motion into motion? If you guessed move the ramp up and make it more of an incline to be like this one, then you're correct. The best way to change a potential motion into a motion is by increasing the incline or by taking away some of those friction forces, such as making a rough surface smooth or adding in the factor of gravity. We want to make sure that this object is able to move. So I'm going to show you an example, and then I'll explain to you what your activity is for today.
All right, so you see here is my example of motion and potential motion. Just like the example I showed you on the whiteboard, I am using two ramps. My ramps are made with my Journeys textbook. So you see one is at a little incline or going up small, and the other one is taller. It's at a stronger incline. So for your activity today, you will be showing an example of potential motion and motion using whatever objects you would like. I have chosen to do something similar to the example I already gave, but I want you to be creative. So here's what your activity will look like. First, you will need to create your potential motion and your motion examples. You'll need to create your ramps. Then you need to guess which one is showing motion and which one is showing potential motion. So I've written it down on paper, and I'm gonna guess this one is showing potential motion and this one is showing motion. So that's my guess. Then after you make your guess of which one is showing motion and which one's showing potential motion, you will actually do your experiment. So let's see. I'm gonna try the motion one first. So I'm gonna put my block up here, then I let go and I see what happens. Okay, so it slid all the way down. Let's see what happens with this one. I put my block here and it just stays. So it hasn't moved yet. So I had guessed that this one shows motion and this one shows potential motion. I am correct. After you decide if you're correct or not, you are going to explain why. I am correct in saying this one is motion because the object moved and the force of the friction was a lot less than the force of the gravity pulling the block down the ramp. I guessed that this one was potential motion. I'm correct because my object did not move. The force of the friction was a lot stronger than my force of gravity. So you will record that.
That was a really cool experiment. I'm glad I got to do it. Now it's your turn to try it at home. So be creative, build a ramp, use whatever objects you want to show potential motion or motion. Then record your video, explain your answers and if your guess was correct, and then turn it in so I can watch them. After this video, you will see the pictures that have the information that is written down about potential motion and motion. Make sure you read it or listen to the read aloud so then you have all the information you need to know before beginning the activity. Bye!
Friction opposes motion and potential motion. Look at the picture of the block on the ramp. Are there forces at work there? Yes, there are. The force of gravity is pulling the block downward. However, the block does not move. That is because there is a friction force between the block and the ramp. The friction opposes the force of gravity. When the two forces are balanced, there is no change in the block's motion. In this way, friction opposes the potential motion of the block. Now, what would happen if you lift the ramp higher at one end? At some point, the force of gravity would overcome the force of friction. The forces would become unbalanced. Movement occurs as the block slides down the ramp.